So have you ever asked for forgiveness, but the feeling of guilt outlasted the actual confession?
Oh, absolutely. Like, you said the words and you genuinely meant the words, but then, 3 days later, you're driving to work and there is still this heavy, lingering knot in your stomach.
Right. It's like your brain and your gut are just operating in completely different reality zones.
Yeah, your brain has completely moved on, but your nervous system just hasn't gotten the memo yet. It is a profound and honestly almost universal human experience.
You know intellectually that you've apologized. And maybe the other person even accepted it, which is great. But emotionally, you were still carrying the entire weight of the offense.
Exactly. It's exhausting.
And that agonizing space, that
Yeah.
gap between knowing you were forgiven and actually feeling it, is exactly what we are exploring in today's deep dive.
It's such a crucial topic.
It really is. So we're looking at a really powerful Bible study today. It was facilitated by Minister Tiffany Simmons and featured recently on the YouTube channel Whosoever Believes.
Yeah, it's a fantastic resource.
And our mission today is to figure out how to finally cross that bridge, like going from the crushing burden of guilt to the actual physical feeling of freedom. Because it turns out the way most of us process this concept is just fundamentally broken.
It is broken. And, well, it's broken because we are trying to process these ancient spiritual truths through a very modern and honestly very limited linguistic lens.
Yeah, the English language kind of fails us here.
It totally does. Minister Simmons argues that to truly understand what's happening in that gap, we have to look past our modern English understanding of forgiveness. Like, we have to dig into the original, often surprising meanings hidden in the biblical text.
Right, specifically the original Greek and Hebrew, because the English words we use for sin and forgiveness are actually watering down the entire experience.
We really are.
We essentially need to redefine our entire vocabulary before we can even move forward with this.
I mean, take the word confession, for example.
Oh man, when I hear that word, I immediately picture a criminal finally cracking in a dark interrogation room,
Yeah.
under a single swinging light bulb.
Right. It sounds forced.
It sounds like admitting defeat because you got backed into a corner and the detective just slid the manila folder of evidence across the table.
Our modern connotation is almost entirely punitive. We view confession as this painful process of extracting guilt.
Which is terrifying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you look at 1 John 1:9, the original Greek word for confess has absolutely nothing to do with breaking under pressure.
Nothing at all.
It has nothing to do with being interrogated. It simply means to say the same thing as.
Wow.
Yeah. In a theological context, it just means to say the same thing as God says. It is entirely about coming into agreement and deciding to stop arguing with reality.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because saying the same thing sounds a bit passive at first glance, but it's actually a massive shift in perspective.
It changes everything.
It really does. Confession isn't stepping up to a microphone to announce your failures to the world while everyone throws tomatoes at you.
No, not at all.
I'm trying to picture this. It's more like, okay, imagine you've been hiking all day, you are completely lost in the woods, and you've been fighting your compass for hours.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right. You keep looking at it and you're like, no, north is this way, I swear.
Yeah, just pure stubbornness.
Exactly.
Oh.
So confession is simply the moment you stop fighting. You look at the compass, you let out a breath, and you say, okay, you're right. I'm totally off track. Let's align back to true north.
That captures the mechanics of it perfectly.
Right.
And think about the deeper psychological impact of framing it that way.
It's huge.
It really is. It changes everything about how we approach apologizing, not just to God, but to anyone. When we realize confession isn't about informing God of what we did, because let's face it, omniscience means he already knows.
Right. He's not surprised.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It completely removes the need to, as Minister Simmons puts it, perfume up our apologies.
Perfume up. Meaning, like, we don't have to walk in with a briefcase full of excuses.
Yes. You don't have to say, well, I only reacted that way because they said this, or I know I shouldn't have done that, but I was just so stressed from work.
We do that so often.
We really do. We act like we're in an interrogation room trying to plea bargain for a lesser sentence. But we aren't. We are simply agreeing with reality.
And there is an immense psychological relief in dropping that performance.
Oh, absolutely. The cognitive load of constantly defending your own ego is exhausting.
It is. So confession is just setting down the heavy briefcase of your own defense.
That's exactly it. And once we set that briefcase down and agree with the compass, the response is forgiveness.
But here again, the English word forgive falls short, doesn't it?
It really does. I forgive you. often feel so passive.
Yeah, it sounds like, I'll tolerate you, let's just move on.
Right. But Minister Simmons points out that in the Greek, to forgive literally means to send away or to release a debt entirely.
She uses this vivid imagery to explain the totality of it, which I loved.
Oh, the car analogy.
Yes. Imagine you park your car in front of your house at night. You wake up the next morning, step onto your porch, and the car is completely gone.
Just vanish.
Not even the tires are left sitting on cinder blocks. The entire thing has been physically removed from the premises.
It leaves no residual trace. It's an absolute erasure of the debt.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. And what's fascinating here is how this pairs with the concept of being blessed. In Psalms 32, verses 1 and 2, the text talks about the blessedness of having your transgression forgiven.
Right.
That word blessed signifies a profound bodily gut exhale.
A gut exhale. I love that phrasing.
It isn't just a polite feeling of happiness, it's the literal physical relief of walking out of a prison cell into the sunlight, realizing the door isn't going to lock behind you again.
Minister Simmons actually shares an incredibly transparent personal anecdote to drive this exact feeling home.
She does, and it's so powerful.
She talks about her early 20s, running with the crowd she calls boosters. Basically, people going into stores and stealing clothes.
Right.
She ended up getting caught and locked up. And she describes the overwhelming embodied relief when she was finally released from that facility.
Yeah, she says when she hit the sidewalk of freedom, she could have literally kissed the ground.
That visceral physical release, that complete gut exhale where your whole body goes limp with relief.
Exactly.
That is what true biblical forgiveness is supposed to feel like.
Which, ironically, brings us right back to the central dilemma we started with.
We have to confront the gap.
We do. If confession is just an agreement with reality, and forgiveness is this immediate, complete removal of the debt.
If the car is entirely gone from the driveway.
Right. Why does the listener still feel terrible 3 days after apologizing? If the math checks out, why doesn't the heart feel it?
We have to move from the legal definition of forgiveness to the physical reality of the aftermath.
Exactly.
I'm stopping you right there, though, because I know exactly what you are thinking as you listen to this. You're thinking, okay, if my slate is wiped clean, why am I still hurting?
It's the most natural question in the world.
And the original text actually holds the answer in a way that modern translations often blur together.
Yeah, they really do.
In 1 John 1:9, there are two distinct verbs functioning side by side. God is faithful and just to forgive us and to cleanse us.
They aren't synonyms.
Not at all. They represent two entirely different realities.
They do. And understanding the distinction between those two words is the absolute key to crossing the bridge we're talking about today.
So break that down for us.
Well, forgiveness is immediate, and it is strictly legal. It takes place in the courtroom of heaven. You are acquitted.
Right.
Minister Simmons uses a brilliant earthly rule to explain the logic of this. She says you can't be given 2 parking tickets for the exact same spot by 2 different officers.
Which is such a relief.
Right. If an officer writes you a ticket at 2 p.m., another one can't write you a ticket at 2:05 p.m. for the exact same violation. Once the violation is paid, you cannot be double charged.
It's legally settled.
Exactly. Heaven operates under an infinitely stricter version of that jurisprudence. The legal debt is immediately and permanently cleared.
But then there's that second word, cleanse.
Yes.
Forgiveness handles the legal side, but cleansing handles the relational and progressive side.
Yeah.
Minister Simmons highlights that the Greek word for cleanse used in that passage is actually a medical term.
Yeah, it was used in antiquity for the process of healing a disease.
It's therapeutic. It is about the transformation of the condition, not just the changing of a legal status.
Precisely.
So think about it like a life-saving surgery. Let's say you have a tumor that represents the sin or the offense.
Okay.
You go into the operating room, and the tumor is removed instantly. The surgery is a complete success.
Right.
Legally, technically, factually, you are cancer-free the moment the doctor closes you up and signs the chart.
Right, the tumor is gone.
But when the anesthesia wears off and you wake up in the recovery room, the surgical site is going to throb. It hurts to breathe. It hurts to move.
And this is exactly where the wires get crossed for so many people.
Yes. That throbbing isn't a sign that the tumor is back. It's not a sign that the surgery failed or that the doctor abandoned you.
No, not at all.
It is just the uncomfortable, progressive, unavoidable pain of a physical body healing from a trauma.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this explains the mechanism behind so much unnecessary spiritual anxiety.
Oh, completely.
Believers routinely confuse the uncomfortable feeling of spiritual transformation or relational repair with a rejection from God.
They feel that throbbing from the surgical site.
Exactly. They feel that lingering guilt, and they immediately interpret it as a legal verdict. They think, I feel bad, therefore God didn't really forgive me. The ticket wasn't really paid.
It's such a tragic misunderstanding.
It is, because that discomfort is actually the process of sanctification. It is the medicine working its way through your system.
It's your brain physically rewiring its habitual pathways.
Yes. Your legal forgiveness is not in process, it is finished. But your emotional and relational cleansing takes time.
Which is honestly such a massive relief to hear.
Oh, for sure.
Because if our feelings that throbbing pain are highly unreliable indicators of our actual status, we need something objective to anchor our peace of mind to.
We have to. We can't trust our emotions in the middle of the healing process.
We have to look at the objective reality of who is standing in the legal courtroom with us.
And that is where the text provides a rock-solid foundation. Our assurance in that courtroom doesn't rest on our own performance.
Thankfully.
Yeah. It doesn't rest on how intensely we cried during our apology or whether we used the perfect vocabulary in our confession. It rests entirely on God's attributes.
The verse explicitly says he is faithful.
Meaning, he keeps his promise regardless of the fluctuations in our mood. And he is just.
The word just is so important there.
It is the linchpin of the whole thing. It means the debt was already paid on Calvary. God cannot violate his own nature by demanding a second payment for a debt that was already settled.
That would make him an unjust judge.
Exactly.
Because we have an advocate in that courtroom. The study points to 1 John 2, verses 1 and 2, which describes Jesus not just as a distant savior, but as our active advocate and our propitiation.
Propitiation is a big theological word.
It is, but it basically just means he absorbed the penalty, he took the physical wrath, the crown of thorns, the whipping, the execution, and he is currently seated, actively interceding for us based on that finished work.
And to illustrate the sheer scale of that advocacy, Minister Simmons points to a brilliant geographical reality from Psalms 103, verse 12.
I love this part.
Right. The verse says our transgressions are removed as far as the east is from the west. Now think about the geometry of a globe. If you start traveling north, eventually you hit the North Pole.
And the moment you take one more step past the pole, you are now walking south.
Exactly. The North and South poles eventually meet.
But east and west don't work like that.
They don't. East and west operate on an infinite mathematical line. You can travel east forever, circumnavigating the globe millions of times, and you will never, ever intersect with west. They never touch.
It's mind-blowing when you really picture it.
It is. The source uses this to demonstrate the infinite, unbridgeable distance God has put between you and your confessed mistake.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because you might wonder, why would God go to such extreme lengths to separate me from my failures?
That's a fair question.
Minister Simmons brings up Isaiah 43:25, which features this stunning, almost shocking detail. In it, God says he blots out our transgressions for his own sake.
Just let that sink in for a second.
Right. He doesn't do it because we finally earned it. It is so liberating because it means God's forgiveness isn't fundamentally based on how good we are. It's based on his absolute need to remain consistent with his own holy character.
He is a covenant-keeping God.
Yes. He blots it out because of who he is, not who we are.
That removes the burden of perfection from our shoulders entirely. And to solidify the permanence of this, she references Colossians 2:12.
Okay.
This text states the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands was canceled and literally nailed to the cross.
Wow.
Minister Simmons uses a great modern parallel here. It's like receiving the physical stamped deed in your hand after you make the final payment on your car.
You own it.
You own it. The bank has no legal authority to come tow it away. Her advice here is incredibly practical and, frankly, a bit blunt. She says when your debt is nailed to the cross, don't grab a ladder to go pull your sins back down.
Don't grab a ladder. I love that imagery so much. Just leave it up there.
Seriously, leave it.
It is so tempting, though, to climb up and inspect our failures again, just to make sure we feel appropriately bad about them.
We love to punish ourselves.
We really do. But okay, we've settled the vertical relationship with God. Heaven's courtroom is closed. The judge has struck the gavel. The debt is paid. The car deed is in our hand.
Right.
But what happens when we leave the courtroom, walk out onto the street, and bump right into the actual human being we have wronged?
Well, this is where the theology has to get its hands dirty.
Yeah.
Because While the vertical relationship with God is settled perfectly and instantaneously, we still have to navigate the messy, unpredictable, and honestly incredibly vulnerable horizontal reality of human relationships.
And Minister Simmons does not let us off the hook here.
Oh, definitely not.
It would be so easy to say, God forgave me, so I don't need to deal with you.
Yeah.
But she brings in Matthew 5, verses 23 and 24, which completely shatters that idea.
It really does.
It essentially commands us that if we are offering a gift at the altar, meaning if we're in the middle of our most sacred act of worshiping God, and we suddenly remember that our brother or sister has something against us, we are supposed to stop.
Just stop right there.
We are told to literally leave the gift at the altar. God basically says, hold on, I'll wait right here, go fix it with them first, then come back. Yeah, the vertical relationship is primary, yes, but horizontal restoration with the people we've hurt is absolutely crucial for true, lived-out freedom.
She shares another incredibly relatable personal story to illustrate how jarring this command can be in real life.
Oh, the 3 a.m. story.
Yes. She talks about a time she was on a dedicated spiritual fast. She wakes up at 3 a.m. to study her Bible, deeply engaged in this profound spiritual routine.
The house is quiet. She's totally focused.
Exactly. And right then, in the middle of her worship, God prompts her to text 2 specific people to apologize to them.
And the best part is, she actually argues with God about one of them.
Which is so funny and real.
She tells God, I'll text the first one, but the second one. She tried to be smart with me. You saw what she did, Lord.
Which is the most human reaction ever.
It really is.
We always want to litigate the other person's behavior to justify our own lack of accountability. We think, my 10% of the blame is canceled out by their 90%.
Right.
But she realizes in that 3 a.m. moment that the apology isn't actually about validating or invalidating the other woman's behavior.
It's not about them at all.
No. It is entirely about keeping her own heart clean. She refuses to let her own pride make her miss her communion with God. She realizes that the interruption to her worship, the difficult apology, was the actual worship.
That is a staggering realization.
It changes your whole perspective.
It does. But as we talk about making things right with other people, there's a very crucial distinction in the source material that you really need to hear. It's the difference between restitution and reconciliation.
This is so important.
Understanding this difference will save you so much horizontal heartache. So restitution requires only you. It is the act of owning your part, telling the truth about it, apologizing sincerely, and attempting to make it right.
Right, just your side of the street.
Exactly. Reconciliation, on the other hand, requires 2 people. It is a mutual coming together, a rebuilding of trust, and it absolutely cannot be forced.
This raises an important question about modern relational dynamics, though.
How so?
Well, Minister Simmons explicitly warns that seeking restitution does not mean you are required to return to unsafe or abusive relationships.
Oh, that's a vital caveat.
It is. You don't have to force a toxic reconciliation just to check a spiritual box or prove you are a good person.
Right.
But on the flip side, she severely challenges a very common modern tendency. In today's culture, people love to use therapeutic language as a shield.
Oh, I know exactly where you're going with this.
Yeah, they will say, I'm just protecting my peace as an excuse to completely avoid apologizing when they know they were dead wrong.
Yes. She calls that out directly. You cannot weaponize the concept of protecting your peace to avoid accountability.
No, you can't.
Because avoiding an apology doesn't actually bring peace. It just buries the conflict under a layer of denial.
Precisely. True peace is the byproduct of obedience and integrity.
That's a great way to say it.
When you try to manage the other person's reaction, when you say, I'll only apologize if I know they will forgive me, you aren't actually apologizing.
What are you doing then?
You are trying to manipulate them into absolving your guilt.
Wow. Ouch.
Yeah. There is a profound psychological shift that happens when you realize the outcome of your apology belongs entirely to God and to the other person.
That makes sense.
If you offer genuine restitution and the person completely rejects your apology, that is their burden to carry. Your only job is the obedience of the attempt.
So you just do your part.
You do your part for restitution, and you leave the heavy, complicated burden of reconciliation out of your hands.
It takes so much of the paralyzing pressure off. You don't have to manage their reaction. You just have to manage your own integrity.
Exactly.
So let's step back and look at this incredible journey we've been on today.
It's been a lot of ground to cover.
We started by completely redefining our vocabulary. We learn that confession isn't a tearful breakdown in an interrogation room. It's simply dropping our defenses, agreeing with the compass, and realigning to true north. We learn to separate the immediate, legal reality of forgiveness in heaven's courtroom from the progressive, sometimes painful, throbbing process of emotional cleansing here on earth.
The surgery versus the healing.
Yes, we discovered that our assurance isn't tied to our fluctuating feelings, but is anchored to our advocate, who throws our mistakes infinitely away as far as the east is from the west,
Purely for his own namesake.
purely for his namesake. And finally, we looked at the messy horizontal reality, the mandate to do our part in human restitution without trying to control or force the reconciliation.
And all of these threads point back to the ultimate verdict found in Romans 8, verse 1, which the study uses as its definitive conclusion.
What does it say?
It says, "There is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus." Notice the timeline there.
Now,
Yes. It doesn't say there will be no condemnation eventually when you finally feel better about yourself. It says now, the gavel has already fallen, the case is dismissed.
case dismissed. You know, Minister Simmons brings up one final, brilliant detail that I want to leave you to mull over today.
Oh, this part is so good.
When addressing why we struggle so hard to accept this now, she talks about the Garden of Eden. She points out that the enemy's absolute oldest trick is recycling the exact same whisper he used on Eve at the very beginning.
He hasn't changed his playbook at all.
He really hasn't. He sneaks into the quiet moments right when your surgical site is throbbing and he whispers, "Did God really say?"
Chilling?
So I want you to deeply consider this today. The next time you hold on to guilt long after you've confessed and made things right, what is actually happening?
That's the real question.
Are you really being humble? Are you genuinely being pious by punishing yourself and refusing to let it go? Or, in your attempt to look spiritually contrite, are you actually falling for the oldest trick in the book by looking at the creator of the universe and calling him a liar?
It's a harsh reality check.
It is. If the judge says the debt is paid and the car is totally gone from the driveway, take him at his word.
Stop grabbing a ladder to pull your sins back down from the cross.
Exactly.
Right.
Drop the briefcase and finally step out onto that sidewalk of freedom.